Hello everyone, this is the CircuitPython Weekly for August 17th, 2020. It's the time of the week where we get together to talk about all things CircuitPython. I'm Jeff Epler and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python designed to run on tiny computers called microcontrollers. Development of CircuitPython is primarily sponsored by Adafruit, so support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting is hosted on the Adafruit Discord server. You can join anytime by going to adafru.it/discord. We hold the meeting in the CircuitPython text channel and the CircuitPython voice channel. This meeting typically happens on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, but the date occasionally varies for U.S. holidays. We have an online calendar. If you would like to speak in the meetings, let us know and we will add you to the CircuitPythonistas role. This will also get you a small number of notifications from Discord during the week, mostly reminders about the meeting. The length of the meeting varies, but it's often from 60 to 90 minutes long. This meeting is recorded and will be posted to YouTube and released on various podcast services. If you find that this podcast is not available on your favorite podcast service, let us know. The meeting recording includes the text in the CircuitPython channel and the audio from the CircuitPython audio channel. This meeting is accompanied by a notes document. If you wish to participate but don't have a mic, or just prefer not to have your voice recorded, you can add your updates to the notes doc and we'll read them off. If you can't attend at all, you can leave your notes in advance and likewise, we'll read them for you. The document is updated with time codes when I remember to do it, so that if you want to watch or listen to just part of the meeting after the fact, you can skip to what you're interested in. If you're listening in, please let us know you're lurking so that we can skip over you during the round-robin portions of this meeting. If possible, please update the notes document to say so. If not, let us know by saying just listening or lurking in the text channel. As most of you know, this meeting is held in 5 parts. First, community news with links to CircuitPython projects and a preview of the Python on Hardware newsletter. Second, the state of CircuitPython libraries and Blinka. We'll look at numbers that summarize the health of the project and get a high-level summary of recent development and future direction. Third, and the first of 2 round-robin sections, Hug Reports. In Hug Reports, we invite you to highlight positive contributions from the awesome folks around us. In the round-robin sections, we start with the moderator and continue in alphabetical fashion until everyone has had a chance to speak. If you're lurking, we'll skip over you. If you have notes, the moderator will read them aloud. Fourth is status updates. During status updates, we invite community members to take a few minutes to talk about their CircuitPython-related work, progress, and plans. Feel free to chime in with quick tips or advice as appropriate. Quick questions and answers are perfect for this section, but longer discussions should be taken to our last section, In the Weeds. For topics that are more open-ended, this is the section where we can discuss them. If you have something else you'd like to discuss, please add it to the end of the In the Weeds section of the notes document as soon as you think of it, and tag it with your name so we'll know who is starting the discussion. We'll cover topics in the weeds in the order that they were added to the document. With that, I will take a time code and we will continue to community news. So first in community news, and Foamy Guy, if you're here and can get the URLs, that would be great. We have CircuitPython takes flight in MS Flight Simulator, creating a flight controller for Microsoft Flight Simulator using CircuitPython and custom circuits. The author says, for many years I have used and played in Microsoft Flight Simulator X. In anticipation of the upcoming release of the new version, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, I wanted to ensure I had the best setup ready for flight. I knew that CircuitPython had a gamepad software library that makes your CircuitPython code appear like a joystick. I had an idea that this could be hacked up easily and made to suit my purpose. CircuitPython also makes working with hardware easy. Next, we've got the CircuitPython Clue Qtbot. It's a higher-level library to allow Adafruit's Clue and ElecFreak's Microbit Smart Qtbot to communicate while maintaining all the functionality of the Clue except for touch features. Author writes, I am a teacher of young learners, and as such, the code was purposely left simple so I can use it with them. There's also a comment on nearly every line to help explain to my students what each line is doing. CircuitPython Day is 9/9/2020. We've chosen September 9th as the snakiest day of this year for CircuitPython Day. More to come on events and happenings to include a CircuitPython team live stream, collaboration with hardware and software folks, and highlighting all things Python and Python on hardware. It is with great sadness that the community saw the devastation of Beirut several days ago. So many residences were heavily damaged. it was a great relief to hear from our 2019 CircuitPython Day partners Lambda Labs Makerspace. Things have been quite tough these days, they say, but so far all is manageable. We did a roll call yesterday on all our maker communities. Aside from minor injuries and stitches, broken glass, broken window frames, and some broken cars, no real harm done. All the love from here in Beirut. Adafruit is dedicating CircuitPython Day 2020 to Lambda Labs and supporting NGO fundraising for the city. And we've put a couple of links to NGOs that Lambda Labs endorsed here in the chat. And there's a lot more stuff in the newsletter, so as a reminder, you should subscribe at adafruitdaily.com. So here's just a few more items. Simulating Firefly flashes with NeoPixel LEDs in CircuitPython. The CircuitPython clue menu, which makes your clue multifunctional by adding a nifty startup menu to select the program you want to run. Conway's Game of Life on an ESP32 with MicroPython and an LCD display. And Python T Episode 10 with special guest Lucas Langa on release management, typing in Python, async I/O, MIDI, and synths. And one last one, because this is just beautiful and I can't say enough wonderful things about it. The Ocean Epoxy Resin Lightbox with LED RGB Matrix Image Scroller from Erin St. Blaine. I had a hand in this, but she did all of the artistic parts, and it makes me smile every time I see it. So finally, I will close out this section by inviting you to contribute to the newsletter. The CircuitPython Weekly Newsletter is a community-run newsletter emailed every Tuesday. We have the complete archives online. Every week we highlight the latest CircuitPython-related news from around the web, including MicroPython, Python, and CircuitPython developments. To contribute, edit next week's draft on GitHub and submit a pull request with the changes. You can also tag your information on Twitter with hashtag CircuitPython. Next is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. Overall, we continue to have pretty good participation from the community with 22 pull requests merged by 15 authors and 8 reviewers. So among the authors, Ji Ong Wei He is a name that I don't recognize. NVT Kazpir is another one that's new to me. Syscorn is doing more and more, and we're happy to see that. Linus G and David Cloud. I guess I don't know if Linus has contributed before. David is certainly an occasional contributor. Happy to have you. And the 8 reviewers: myself, Katney, Lady Ada, Carter, Scott, Maker Melissa, R. Hooper, and Dan. Pretty much the usual suspects, but we always welcome more reviewers because they make the development process in our community work. For issues, we had 27 closed issues by 6 people and 12 opened by 9 people. So it was really a pretty strong week in terms of resolving the problems that people in our community are seeing. So overall, as I said, we continue to have strong contributions in the core and libraries. Aside from the activity in the Adafruit bundle, I also want to highlight that we have a new library in the community bundle for the LTR559 light and proximity sensor, which is on the Pimoroni Enviro Plus Featherwing, underscoring the fact that the community is not just Adafruit, the community is makers all over the world. An item carried over from last week is that we really need to make a new alpha release from the core soon. There are currently 269 commits in 23 pull requests that are on the main branch but not released yet, so we need to make it easier for the community to access these features and bug fixes by making a release. Another piece of exciting news from the core is that we have a new Japanese translation contributed by Syscorn. Thank you. That makes the 15th language besides English that we have added. Some numbers from the core before I turn it over. We had 7 pull requests merged by 5 authors and 3 reviewers. So thank you, Syscorn, Jiong Wei He, W. Temura, and Weblate. And thanks to the 3 reviewers, Lady Ada, myself, and Dan. We have 21 open pull requests. We have, as far as issues go, we closed 5 and had 3 open, so we are down 2, but we've got 321 open issues. We manage those issues by milestones, so looking ahead to 6.00, we need to close 9 issues on that milestone before we can release, do a general release of version 6. and refer to the notes doc if you want to see more about that. So with that, I will turn it over to Kattni to tell us about the libraries.
Thanks.
Hi.
So we had 15 pull requests merged by 10 authors, including Gadgetoid, NVT Caspier, and Linus G, are new names that I don't recognize, and 7 reviewers. Our merge pull request, the oldest one was 38 days old, and the most recent ones were 1 day or less, including 2 to the CircuitPython community bundle, leaving us with 43 open pull requests. We had 21 issues closed by 11 people and 8 opened by 6 people, so we are net down, and leaving us with 185 open issues, and currently 9 of those are labeled good first issue. If you are looking to contribute to CircuitPython, the libraries are a great place to start. You can see this information and more at circuitpython.org/contributing, which has all the open pull requests, all of the open issues, and a series of library infrastructure issues. And you can search those issues by label, including good first issue if that's the level that you're looking for, or bug or enhancement if you're looking for something more complicated. And there are guides on contributing to CircuitPython with Git and GitHub, so don't let that part scare you off. The guide is available, and we are also available to help. In terms of library updates in the last 7 days, we had 1 new library, Matrix Portal, and a number of updated libraries that I will not read off. And that's where we are with the libraries.
Thank you, Kattni. And now to tell us about happenings in Blinka, I will turn it over to Maker Melissa.
Hello.
Hi.
This week we had 0 requests. Oh, well, let me start off by saying that Blinka is our CircuitPython library compatibility layer for Raspberry Pi and other single board computers. And this week we had 0 pull requests merged. There are currently 3 open issues with 1. There was 1 closed issue by 1 person and 1 opened by 1 person, leaving a net of 24 open issues. There have been 1,443 Pi PI downloads in the last week, and we are currently supporting 52 boards. And that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. And with that, we move over to our first round robin section, which is called Hug Reports. So I will start to show how it's done, but the idea is to thank and recognize people in the community who are helping others. So I will start after I take my time code with a group hug and a second hug for all of our helper groups here on Discord. We have community helpers, we have CircuitPython helpers, and we just recently added PCB helpers. They are just helpful, and they make this community work. Everyone can help, but these people have been willing to take on a mantle, and I really appreciate that. I want to give a hug to Kattni for a couple of private chats that we had. And I want to thank KMatch98 for stepping up when I reported a problem with labels and didn't provide a whole lot of info. So he and also Foamy Guy worked together to kind of turn that into a reproducible and actionable bug report. I want to thank Dan H. for approving a pull request on the weekend, and Syscorn for contributing the Japanese translation of the CircuitPython core, Carl F.K. for a helpful discussion yesterday about CAN bus, and V923Z for a cool but totally secret and absolutely not leaked progress on Microlab. With that, I will turn it over to Jaren, and then Kattni is on deck.
Hello, where my notes go? There they are. Thank you, Carter, for the awesome hurricane tracker app for the Pi portal. It's really great. It was fun to track a couple of storms last week, and they've now gone away, and it's telling me it's all safe on the East Coast. And thanks to Scott for giving us moderators a break from server discovery. It's been a really nice week.
Thank you, Jerry. KMatch98 is on deck, but now we go to Kattni.
So I have a hug report for Jeff for running the meeting today, and another one for Jeff for 2 lovely and much needed chats last week. And a hug to community moderators on Discord for hanging in there with us and sticking with us while we went through some tougher times, and then have decided on at least a temporary solution. I really appreciate that all of you stuck with us through the whole situation, and that's what I've got.
Thank you, Katney. Maker Melissa is on deck, but now KMatch 98.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Good morning.
Thanks to Foamy Guy. Yep. Special thanks to Foamy Guy with our continued work on improving label. He's done a lot of work on bug fixes and made some good examples for a new library that's upcoming. And special thanks to Scott for a code review on a pull request, and particularly an extended Git help session for me on Discord. Appreciate that.
All right, we'll have Stargirl text only in a second, but Maker Melissa, you are up.
I just wanted to give a HAG report to Tanit for turning off server discovery and a group hug.
Thank you. Mark Gambler and Mr. Certainly are lurking, so we will proceed to Stargirl, who has left me notes. Tanu, you are on deck. Stargirl says, hug report to community helpers for being so helpful in the community. V923Z is on deck. Scott, what do you have for us?
Hello. Jeff, first, thanks and foremost for running the meeting and doing all the stuff afterwards as well. Hug report to Unexpected Maker for jumping into CircuitPython with their Feather S2 support. It was fun to see over the weekend. Thank you to Esden for the FPGA encouragement, and a huge thank you in particular to Greg Steyer, who used to work a lot with FPGAs and has been really helpful. He actually wrote a library long ago to control some FPGAs from CircuitPython. And so I've taken that and kind of revamped it. So that's been really helpful. And I'm making slow progress on that front. And then lastly, I wanted to have a hug report for Ask Patrick W. They wrote up some ESP32S2 CircuitPython info, I think a couple of months back now in a GitHub gist. And it's just been kind of the go-to doc for everybody trying to get started with it. So I really appreciate that. And so thanks to Patrick for that.
Awesome. V923Z is up next, and then we will wrap around to Ask Patrick W.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So I have a group hug, and second, on Saturday evening, I quite unexpectedly bumped into Jeff. We had a friendly chat, and I also asked a technical question. He came back half an hour later with a ridiculously clever solution, but we both agreed quite quickly that it's totally useless. In any case, Jeff, thanks for stepping up to the challenge. And with that, back to you.
All right. So Brent is up next, and Ask Patrick W is text only, so I will read those off. They send a hug report to Unexpected Maker for the help with flashing both my Espricif Sala W Rover and my Feather S2, and thanks to Tanut for the Friday streams. I can rarely watch live, but I very much enjoy the shows, and I pick up tips and tricks along the way. After Brent, we will have Dan, but go ahead, Brent.
All right, out of order. Thanks to Jerry for the RFM9X frozen build. I have to try that in a few minutes once I'm done working on something. And then also to Jeff for making that possible by doing M0 board firmware size reduction. Thanks to Scott for Friday's live stream. I can usually not tune in because it's like at the end of my day, but I made an exception on Friday and it was really fun to watch, and I continued watching it on Saturday. And to Gadgetoid for CircuitPython and Pymoroni drivers. I really like the Pymoroni environmental sensors, and I'm excited to see them happening in CircuitPython land.
Indeed. Charles, are you lurking today, or do you have hug reports?
Yes, I have a hug report.
All right. Well, we are ready for it.
Just a general hug report to everybody, because I haven't been doing a whole lot with my keyboard stuff, which was my CircuitPython project lately. But I hope to. I'm very thankful that I can listen in on this, and the deep to Tanu for his deep dives, because it's very interesting to see how a new setup of CircuitPython is constructed. Thank you.
Thanks. It's always good to see you, Charles. Next, we will go to Dan, and then I have some notes from several people.
Hello. Okay, thanks to Jeff for finding some significant space savings, which make a really big difference on the SAMD21 boards. In the math library, which there was this routine 2 over pi, which was very large, and Jeff was able to figure out that there was an array in it that was a bunch of 32-bit numbers, which were all only 8 bits in length. And so that saved a lot of space. So that was very helpful. And also, he's been cleaning up some stuff about the builds, which make the build logs less noisy and make it easier to find errors in the build log instead of wading through a bunch of stuff that's not really useful. And thanks to Scott last week while we were discussing like kind of troubles that server discovery got us in Discord, and he just said, all right, I'm going to turn it off. And that was exactly what we needed. And we've seen a huge drop in problematic people on Discord now by turning it off. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. I have notes from a couple of people, but the next person besides me who will be speaking is Foamy Guy. So Dave P., who is lurking, says, hug report to Dan H. for helping find and fix an issue with display I/O on NRF boards, and to the community as a whole. After dealing with some other online communities, it is so nice to come here, so welcoming and supportive. And next, I have notes from David Glaude, unless you'd like to try your mic.
Let me try. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Good.
So thank you to Scott for the video he presented. And yeah, there was a lot of JIT stuff that I will need to rewatch. But it did help me to transform a package into a library, and I did it for a few library already. And thank you for Kathleen that made an interesting guide on how to use JIT and GitHub, and I'm going to keep following those because this was really helpful this week. And thank you to Unfinished Stuff on Twitter, which is a guy that made a board so that you can plug Raspberry Pi hat on Feather. And I've got 3 copies of those. One is soldered, and I'm going to play with them.
All right. Higher Effect is on deck, and now we will go to Foamy Guy.
All right. Hello.
Hello.
I'd like to give out a head report to you, Jeff, for pointing out the issue with the display text library. And then another one for KMash98 for digging into that issue and sharing his findings about what was causing it, and it allowed me to kind of jump in and try to get a fix put together. So definitely appreciate both help from both of you guys for helping get that nailed down. And that's all I got this week.
Thanks. It's definitely one of those deceptively simple things. I mean, it doesn't feel difficult, and yet there are a number of combinations, and they end up making things complicated to get all the cases right. So thanks to the both of you for being willing to keep looking into that and digging deeper. All right, I will hand it to Higher Effect next. Then we've got a couple of last people that I will read off before we wrap up this section. Go ahead.
All right. So thanks to Scott for helping me out with some technical issues and kind of style API decisions last week for the ESP32S2 pulse in and pulse out libraries that I've been working on. Thanks to you, Jeff, for keeping up with that RGB matrix PR and getting that through while I was deep in ESP32. I kind of stopped paying attention to it, and you made sure that everything didn't break, so thank you. And then thanks to our contact who's interested in adding the STM32F401RE for sending me a development board that I can test on, which are very hard to find here in the US, and he's sent me one express. So that'll be cool to try out. That's it for me.
Very cool. All right. Taking a time code, and I will read hug reports from Gadgetoid, who says, hug report to David Glaude for helping update EnviroPlus to CircuitPython 5.x, and a hug report to Tanut for being so accommodating while I'm being onboarded in the ecosystem. that's what we're all here to help you do. But yeah, Scott is a great one to lean on. And to wrap it up, I have notes from Jay Guitar, who is text only, and sends a hug report to Jerry and Foamy Guy for help and testing on help with CircuitPython. That wraps up hug reports, so next we turn to status updates. Again, status updates is conducted in a round-robin fashion, and it's time to tell us about what you've been working on since you had a chance to check in with us, as well as tell us what you hope to be working on in the near future. And if you have any updates outside of CircuitPython that you want to share with us, we are open to that as well. So again, I will kick it off. I will try to keep you informed as to who's on deck, which would be Jerry, and I will read the notes of those people who don't have mics. So last week, I spent about another day and a half on the firmware size for M0 boards, but it was for a good cause. It helped us get the new Japanese translation merged. The Sharp Memory Display PR is also merged, so we have support in the core for driving these LCD displays with Display I/O, but there's at least one bug left over. And the related Adafruit guide is getting close to release, but there's still a few more things to stitch up. So this week, I need to figure out a pin allocation problem with Sharp Memory Displays, and possibly getting a last few photos for the guide. And once that's cleared off my plate, my next thing is to dig into CAN bus. We want to create a CAN bus implementation for the SAM E5X series, and so my test board will be the SAM E54 explained dev kit. I'm going to be studying the MicroPython implementation, which is called pyb.can, but as always, we are going to try to make an API that we just feel is the CircuitPython way. And if you do know of a CAN bus peripheral that is cheap enough to pick up on a lark or for testing, you can let me know here in CircuitPython or via direct message. And as far as fun stuff goes, I blogged a Python program that I wrote for setting up registers of the SI5351 clock generator breakout. So there is a link in the notes doc to my blog. Kattni is on deck, and I will hand it over to Jerry.
Hello,
Hi.
Thanks. Yeah, nothing much to report this week. I don't know where the week went, but I was doing some work trying to get ready to build the RFM69 with the library built in, and realized I don't have any of those boards, so they'll be here this week, and I'll be able to test that. I have a ton of feather wings, but none of the boards themselves. And then I got a couple little tweaks to make to the RFM69 library to do that. Just a few size reduction changes I had done on the 9X, but that won't be hard. And otherwise, I got some furniture refinished this week finally after putting it off for a long time, so that felt good.
All right. KMatch98 is on deck, but Kattni is up now.
Hello.
Hi.
So last week, I figured out why a couple of moderators did not have moderator permissions. It was pretty baffling. And emailed Discord support, and they didn't even figure it out. And then Jeff magically figured it out. So that was a bonus, because I really didn't want to go through the whole ordeal that I think they were going to send me through from support before figuring out that that was the problem.
Have you deleted your server and recreated it?
Right. Exactly. So I filed an issue on Adabot to add the CircuitPython cookie cutter to the PR issues check, and then I added cookie cutter to Adabot for the PR issues check and closed my own issue. Tag Justin, who is our web dev guy, to on an issue on the CircuitPython org repo for offering to translate the website. I'll have to take a look at how that's going, actually, but I needed just to get those two in contact, since Justin's kind of the one who does a lot of the code for the site, and someone offered to translate it into Spanish. Created 6 fritzing objects and started a guide that somebody else is doing the rest of. So this week, I need to finish up a complicated in-progress fritzing object. It's a lot of parts, a lot of things. We had to do some magic to make it work. It failed in the beginning, and all kinds of fun stuff. So doing that. There's a bunch of miscellaneous to do. I'm hopefully finally going to be able to get to a library PR sweep, which is just I need to go through all the PRs open on all the libraries. There's a couple that have been called to my attention recently, but really we need to go through all of them. As well, I'd like to begin updating the code of conduct across all the libraries. We made a few changes. One is not entirely necessary to make a change, but the other one should be updated across the board. So that involves an Adabot patch. That's not a huge deal. And then I need to begin adding descriptions to all of the Adafruit GitHub repos. Jeff actually is the one who figured out that it helps with searching and some other stuff to have a description in the repo, and you can add a description when you create it. But if you miss that or don't know it's there or whatever, it kind of just gets lost in the mix. And there are a lot of repos without it. So I think there's been a check added to Adabot to list repos that don't have descriptions. And so I need to go through that. And then after that, or probably more like after the PR sweep, the code of conduct and the descriptions thing is probably going to end up waiting, is some unknown next project from a giant list that Lamar has that she said to ping her, and we'll figure out what to do next. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, Katney. KMatch 98 is up next, and then we will go to Maker Melissa.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Hi.
So I answered some good comments on a new function called bitmap.blit for the display I/O. Some bugs that were major bugs. So I think I've got those mostly resolved and trying to build that. I also submitted a PR just this morning to try and speed up creation of labels, where it was spending a lot of time looking for glyphs. So I think that will significantly speed up creating new labels. And then last, as I'm digging in to understand how CircuitPython core works, I built at least some help for me that looks like what you see on those detective shows where there's string and push pins and all connecting things, so-called evidence board, to try and understand how all the pieces between C and Python fit together. So some visual indication of how that works. And then this week, some minor bugs in label to solve, just related to line spacing.
If you feel like sharing it, I would love to see a photograph of your evidence boards. That sounds kind of fun.
Okay, I'll post them.
All right. So Stargirl, who I'm guessing is still text only, will be on deck, but now we go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. So last week I worked on adding the STM32MP1 to Blinka. However, it's on pause as I figure out some key issues, which involve a lot of waiting. I got the Matrix Portal library finally published. I wrote a simple clock demo for John Park using that library, and I went ahead and converted the Adafruit fan service install script from shell to Python. I also did that with the I2S mic install script, and I started working on the e-ink bonnet guide for the next 2 weeks, because this week is short for me because I won't be in the CircuitPython meeting next week. I'm going to read that. So I'm going to finish up the e-ink bonnet guide, write another Matrix Portal demo, create a library to enclose some shell installation functions, convert more shell scripts to Python, and try poking at the STM32MP1 some more to see if I can get pip running on the default image. And for fun stuff, I've been kind of learning the ins and outs of USB-C, power management, and dual role ports.
All right. I will read some notes from Stargirl, and then after that we will go to Tanut. So Stargirl says, still waiting on my stuff to arrive from Seattle, crying emoji, and working through the firmware for my module. Got ADCs, pulse out, and I2C all working in a bare metal SAMD21 project. I think we will pop up to the top for updates from Brent after we hear from Scott.
I think you're one ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll go to Zoltan next.
Yeah. I got Wi-Fi working, both HTTP and HTTPS on the ESP32S2. It does need some rework that I may kind of punt off for.
I can pick it up.
What, Charles?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was
No harm done.
Yeah. So got that going. I need to rework it. Probably not this week, but maybe next week. I want to use embed TLS directly so that I can get better error messages. So I'll do that at some point. But for now, I want to just get it in so people can start poking it and telling me what's wrong, which I'm sure there is lots wrong, but that's okay. So yeah, I'm going to get that PR'd. And I was removing a bunch of comments and stuff that are debug statements to make that smoother. This week, I think I'm gonna really kind of call it memory week. In particular, I'm planning on adding PS RAM support, and I want to think more about both socket memory management and perhaps even experiment with allocating memory in CircuitPython in the same, like using the underlying IDF memory allocation stuff. So I'm going to think about that, and then. One item I want to do is we've talked about doing another release, and I think we can actually get to the beta phase. I think the only outstanding API change we wanted to do was actually introduce PWM-IO and putting PWM out in there along with leaving it in Pulse.io just for 6. And then in 7, we'll remove it from Pulse.io. That's something we talked about doing. It should be simple, so I'm hoping to knock that out today. And then I think Dan's going to take over getting like 6.0 out the door and being better about getting it all done. So we'll hear from Dan about that. And then in my fun time, I didn't put it in here, but I've been working on FPGA stuff, which I think folks know. I created 2 libraries based on some existing code. I created Adafruit Jtag, which is a like very low level Jtag bitbang library. Basically repackaged one that I had found. So it's actually GPL3. It's not MIT, but that's fine. And then I also created a library for managing a Lattice Mach XO series FPGAs from CircuitPython as well. So being able to flash programs over I2C, which I think is really exciting. So I've got that working. They definitely need to be polished up. But that's interesting progress. Kind of my end goal is to basically make it so that you can have like a Stemma QT FPGA that basically is like any sort of I2C device that you want to make it. And then you could talk to it over I2C. So I'm playing around with that. I don't think it's going to be a mix. I think like the library will just the library itself will just be GPL v3, and that should be okay. If it's really going to be a concern, I know the authors of the code, so maybe we can ask them to relicense it to us if we're concerned about that. But yeah, that's what I've been doing.
All right. I will pass it to V923Z, then back up to the top of the alphabet with Brent.
Thanks, Jeff. So in the past 2 weeks, I had a bit of time to work on Microlab. There was a sort of conceptual fault in the original implementation, and that prevented me from adding things that I really wanted to have in Microlab. And I seem to be hitting roadblocks, whatever I tried. But some 2 weeks ago, I realized that I can index the arrays a bit differently, and then everything becomes simple and elegant. Perhaps not elegant, but simple enough. So I set out to rewrite the code from scratch, and this approach allowed me to implement quite a few new features that I am really excited about. I would just like to highlight 3 of them in the hope that you will become equally excited. And I would drop a couple of comments in the weeds, what it means for CircuitPython, what can be done with it, and so on and so forth. So the first feature is I implemented support for 4-dimensional arrays. there was at least one person who wanted to have 4, and quite a few people wanted to have 3. Most notably the OpenMV community, because they work with RGB images. But our own Charles Bonaford claimed once that he wanted to play chess with MicroPython, and he needed 3 dimensions for that. So Charles, there you have it. I also implemented proper views, which, well, it was missing from the old, the concept itself was missing from the old implementation, and it could be really useful for manipulating frame buffers and things like that. And finally, we'll have Numpy compatible broadcasting, which broadcasting in itself is a really powerful and concise way of writing loops for numerical data without actually writing the loop out. So these are the features that I think they are working now. I still have to implement 2 functions from the numerical submodule, and then after that I would like to do some thorough testing. And if I am done with that and the week is still not up, then I would like to shake up the user manual a bit. So first I want to bring in the CircuitPython stubs and make them part of the MicroPython or Microlab manual. And second, I would definitely like to add a section on how to write your own functions for in Microlab, because well, I'm really pleased with the fact that I know how it works, but it would be so much better if people knew how to extend it, how to mold it into their own requirements. And what would be even more better is if people could contribute to the core. So I'm determined to lower the contribution threshold considerably. And these are the plans. We'll see how far I get. But with that, I would like to step off deck.
Thank you. That is quite a lot of good stuff. And now I'm scrolling. All right. Dan will be on deck, and we will go to Brent after I take a time code.
Hello. Not a lot in the CircuitPython front, except for I got the new Sharp LCD in, and I want to convert the the Pi-hole ad blocker that I have set up in my network from OLED to the Sharp LED LCD, because I don't really like blinky lights, and my stuff is in my kitchen. So it's a really nice display, and I'm excited to play around with it more. Maybe you can show more statistics about what's actually going through the DNS server.
Thank you. David Glaude will be on deck, and we will go next to Dan.
Hello. So over the weekend, I kind of finished up ACI BLEIO implementation for peripherals last week and did more testing and some bug fixing over the weekend. And I've now tested it. I can get the Bluefruit Connect app on the phone to talk to an airlift, a Metro M4 airlift board, and have it manipulate neopixels. I also can get the Bluefruit Playground app to talk to another piece of code and get the temperature off the same board. So both those things are working. And so we have enough working now so that it's time to go ahead and do some kind of release of this code. And so I'll be submitting a PR soon. It doesn't have central mode still, and that will be implemented somewhere down the line. But for what we can do great things with it already. So that's good enough for now. Another thing I did over the weekend was fix a bug that had been in the NRF code for a while, where the SPI number 3 peripheral is special, and it's also buggy. And so it needs to have its own 8K memory area, or else you can get corrupted data. So I had implemented this AK area, but it turned out I put it in the wrong place, and it was causing errors in display IO and maybe some other things. And so I put it in the right place. We had to shrink some buffers in Bluetooth slightly, but it should probably not make any significant difference in the performance. And there's some other bugs that I fixed inside the NRF implementation in the course of working on the HCI implementation. So those will be included in the HCI pull requests. And as Scott mentioned, I'll be kind of shepherding the 6.0 release now. From now on, fixing some bugs and just doing the regular releases. And Scott can continue to concentrate on getting Wi-Fi, ESP32 S2 Wi-Fi working. Okay.
Thanks in particular for working on the release, Dan. That's going to be very important. Benefit a lot of people. So Foamy Guy is on deck, but now David, what do you have for us?
So I've been working on Unviro plus Featherwing, the Pimoroni stuff for environmental sensor. So I tested if we could save memory on the LTR559 by moving all of the constants into a separate file. It's not a PR because I did that on my own GitHub stuff, but okay, this is an ID for Gadgetoid. I did transform the PM25 library into splitting files so that you can import either the I2C or the UART part. It's still a PR. It's based on the suggestion from Scott. So, well, if someone can have a look if I did that right, because now that I started to split that library, I also did split the IS31FL3731. And there are quite a few boards, and I tested with the 2 boards I have. One issue I have with that kind of transformation is that the example also needs to be changed because you cannot import the same way. Or maybe there is some magic where you, from this, import that as this, so that you can make the right name without having to change, to make breaking change. I connected my Clue to a Raspberry Pi with some Chinese hardware I found, and I've been able to access the 5 I2C sensor. So from the Raspberry Pi, I was able to see the temperature and other stuff. And now I'm trying to figure out if I can do the screen, but apparently this SPI bus is different on the Clue between the one which is exposed on the connector and the one which is connected to the screen. So maybe I need to find some kind of a bridge code that would be running in Arduino that would transport from one SPI to another SPI. I don't know, I've got no clue. And then I've got, I would like to try the button and the LED and the RGB LED to try to use them from the Raspberry Pi. Because I mean, you have all of those sensors on the Clue and you can use them on the Pi, so it's super fun. I've been soldering my feather cap, which is a board to put Raspberry Pi hat on a feather. I still need to find a few resistors for the I2C. I hope to identify the one he's using and then find something similar in my stuff. And then I've got 2 weeks of vacation starting from today, but I'm not going anywhere because of the virus. So maybe I'm gonna work a lot on CircuitPython, or maybe I'm gonna take a break. I don't know, but good things may be coming.
All right, thank you. Yeah, what to do in our leisure time is like a really complicated thing right now, and you got to chart that, I think, for yourself according to your own preferences. So Foamy Guy is up next, and Hierophect is on deck to wrap it up.
All right. So last week I got some work done on the display layouts library. I got the linear layout implemented, so it will take a list of sort of children views and put them all in either a vertical or a horizontal row, depending on which orientation you set. And that's working pretty well. while I was working on that, I found a bit of a peculiar thing with the display button library. I think I mentioned that briefly last week, which was the way that you have to access the group property with that one, unlike a couple of the other display.io components. And so this week I made a tweak there in the button library and got that PR in, and that was merged as well. I did, as part of that process, working on my layouts library, I also noticed something interesting with the progress bar library. It keeps the height and width properties, but they are private. They start with an underscore. And so I did put in a PR to propose a minor tweak there to make those public, because that would make my job a little bit easier when it comes to setting those things into, again, one of those like horizontal or vertical row type layouts. Worked on fixing that positioning issue with the display text that Jeff had found for us. And then lastly, I created a couple example scripts for the Bitmap font library. I noticed there was a single example in there, and it seems to be only written to run on CPython. And interestingly, not, as far as I can tell, even not necessarily within Blinka, just sort of regular old CPython. So I created a few more examples that will run on microcontrollers there, and then kind of took it a step further with one of them and was playing around with it and managed to get some rainbow colored custom fonts loaded and displayed on the screen. So that was kind of a fun thing this weekend. For next week, I've got to finish up that issue with display text, and then there's another PR on the PN532, which is RFID NFC scanner. So I'm going to do some testing and get a review in there this week. Keep going on the layout library. I want to get the grid layout is the other one I had in mind, along with the linear layout. So I'd like to be able to have a way to easily lay out all those children view into a two-dimensional grid. So that's the next thing there. And then I also want to get some sort of testing or test driving going on there, where I'm going to take a few existing projects, hopefully with relatively complex UIs, and refactor those over to use the layout system and see if I like the way the code turns out in the end. So if anybody knows of projects or has projects that are relatively complex UIs, and you'd like to see how they could be simplified or at least separated the layout out from the logic, definitely point me in the direction of those. And then lastly, I'll mention outside of the CircuitPython world, game that I'm really interested in, Factorio. They released finally the 1.0 version over the weekend, so this game's actually been out for a long time now, years and years, but they've been technically in beta, and they've been putting lots of great effort into it. So it finally released over the weekend, hooray. Spent probably way too much time playing it, probably will spend a much more time playing it. And then to tie it into the CircuitPython world, I kind of got reignited into playing it, and I want to build one of the components of the game is launching a rocket. So I want to build a hardware rocket launching button with like a key and a big emergency button and flashing lights and sirens and all that stuff. So that's how I'm going to kind of tie those two fun things together. And that's all I got for this week.
Well, that sounds like plenty. I will turn it over to Hierophect to wrap up status updates.
Okay, so this past week I mostly worked on my current project, which has been pulse in and pulse out on the ESP32S2. That was bleeding over from previous weeks. Pulse out ended up being pretty easy, but pulse in was a little bit more painful. So that's had some API changes and other things, but all of that is in the new PR for that. I answered some community questions, and I got my new F1 discovery board from China in the mail, so I can start checking out the flash system for that now and hopefully get that PR unstuck. This week, I'm going to be putting together just a big bug to-do list. We've got just a bunch of old stuff from the STM32 that I kind of took a break from keeping track of to get the ESP32S2 stuff out the door. So I want to revisit things like RGB matrix, revisit an SPI issue, a couple other things, and just kind of prioritizing those and trying to get them out of the issues list. And then I'll also be starting with the F1, checking out the flash system and, again, getting that PR unstuck. There's a fun thing that I did last week. I made a really simple flashcard app that I showed on Show and Tell a little while ago. It works on the open book. It's basically a little sentence generator if you're trying to learn a language and you want to make a whole bunch of grammatically similar sentences that just happen to have different grammar, so you can study something like, I don't know, verb conjugation, and some languages have really complicated specific lists of words for saying what day it is, like what you could study the days of the week or how many days in a month or something like that. I made a little Python script for that and put it on the open book from Joey Castillo, but it also works on a host PC. I threw that up on GitHub this week, and I'm hopefully going to be pushing some more edits to it as I use it myself. So that's it for me.
Thank you. What a lot of stuff people are up to. That wraps up status updates and brings us to the last section, which is called In the Weeds. So during In the Weeds, we can engage in long-form discussion about stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else in this meeting format. So if you have something still, you have not missed your chance to raise the issue for discussion, just add it at the end of the section in the notes document. But for now, I will hand the baton back to Zoltan, who has a couple of comments on Microlife integration into CircuitPython.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. These are really just a couple of comments, and I don't expect any sort of conclusion at the end of the day. These are mainly hints as to what to expect and what kind of trade-offs you would have to think about when you want to bring Microlab into CircuitPython. So the first is I would like to implement customization or options for almost everything. The main reason being that adding extra dimensions to the library adds to the firmware size too. I'm not done yet, but I estimate it to be something like 20 kilobytes for every new dimension, except for the first one, because that's significantly smaller, simply for the reason that you can remove all functions that would operate on a matrix. So if you have a one-dimensional array, then you won't need eigenvectors and similar functions, and those can be removed. Therefore, the one-dimensional implementation is significantly smaller. It will end up somewhere between 20 to 25 kilobytes, I think, compared to the 45 that we presently have. So I do remember that Jeff had to kick Microlab out of one of the smaller boards because it didn't fit. So one possibility would be that you say that you are willing to put up with one dimension for the smaller boards, and then you can still offer the CircuitPython firmware with Microlab integrated. The second customization option is I would really love to add the option to exclude functions at the function level. So at the moment we have submodules, and you can exclude submodules, which means that you remove all functions in that submodule. But on the other hand, there are quite a few functions that I think don't hold general appeal. So I can't imagine that too many people would need sine hyperbolic or error function or things like that on a microcontroller. And you could think about, and if you want to save space, you could think about excluding those functions that are really not useful. They are implemented for completeness sake, but they might not be useful at all. I bring this up because, as I said, the one-dimensional implementation is going to be something like 20-25 kilobytes. 2 dimensions is going to cost 50-55 kilobytes. 3 dimensions is about 70 odd kilobytes, and 4 dimensions might be up to 90 to 100 kilobytes. And I don't know if this fits the boards that you have, or whether you have to implement some sort of trade-offs. But I just wanted to put this out that these options will be there for many reasons. One of them being that it seems to be the case that quite a few MicroPython derivatives use Microlab now, and each have different constraints. So I think this could be a possibility to sort of make everyone's life a bit easier. But again, this is something you, the CircuitPython community, would have to consider which functions make sense, which functions don't make sense. The third issue I wanted to bring up is Numpy compatibility. So quite a few people said that they want to take code from a computer, put it on a microcontroller, and run with it. And at the moment, it's not possible because we have submodules. So, for example, if you want to have a polynomial fit, then you have to import the poly submodule, and then you say poly.polyfit. In Numpy, it's simply polyfit. So that breaks compatibility. I think I would like to make this optional. So if you want to stick with the submodules, so be it. I think that's still okay. The only question is that if we move all functions to the top level, then those the implementation of these functions have to be declared non-static, and I don't know if there are any drawbacks of that. So at the moment, if you have a submodule at the C level, then each function in the submodule is static. But if we want to move functions to the top level, then I think we have to declare them non-static, and I don't know if there are any problems with that. I have forgotten to mention views. I think this. So I have already conferred with Jeff on this subject, and this actually relates to the fourth issue, or fourth comment. The OpenMV people wanted to have some sort of image processing, or at least functions that read images, convert them to NumPy arrays, and then you do the manipulations on these arrays, and then you convert the results back to an image. They specifically asked for something like an RGB 565 to 3-dimensional tensor. So if you have anything like that you would like to have, then I think this would be the opportunity for that, because well, I believe with views, the number of options or the number of possibilities is going to increase significantly, and this relates back to K-Match 98's question about manipulating frame buffers. So these we could now implement, but I would need some pointers as to what is actually needed, because I have very little experience with that. So this is really up to you. This has to come from the community, because I'm clueless in that field. Well, I think these were the comments I wanted to put out there, and if there are any questions or comments, then please fire away.
Well, I can make a couple of comments. First of all, every option that you are willing to take the time to support for your users who, they extend to MicroPython as well as CircuitPython, We appreciate those, and those are going to facilitate the more advanced users of CircuitPython turning those flags on and off as well.
Right.
We arrived at this current split out of a couple of constraints, and we continue to thank you for working with us on that. We identified that it's important that if a module X or a submodule X.Y is present, that we want it to have as nearly as possible the same content on every board where it appears. And that's kind of why we arrived at splitting it up this way rather than having a monolithic thing that was more Numpy compatible. But, I understand different users have different priorities. And so if you are interested in offering a Numpy module that's importable or a Microlab that imports without the modular structure, whichever way, I think, that's fine. It's about what do you want to support. And as far as making those functions not be static or the object definitions not be static, as long as they have distinct names, then that's not going to be a problem, as long as the C identifiers are distinct.
Okay, so there are no hits on firmware size or
no, it shouldn't affect binary size or anything like that. At least on builds that support LTO, link time optimization, which is all of our resource constrained boards. Some of the boards that are less constrained on flash size, we haven't gone through the pain of implementing LTO yet, because usually there are at least a few tricks that you have to do, or a few bugs that you have to fix on the way to enabling that feature. So yeah, and I think that's all I've got.
I would like to call out KMatch98 because he had a very specific request a couple of months ago, and I didn't understand what the requirements were, but perhaps he could expand on that at this moment.
Sure. Yep. So my request is pretty simple in that I was working on text and in essence trying to copy one bitmap into another bitmap. And to do that inside of Python is pretty slow. So basically it's a pixel by pixel copy over going from Python level down to C and back. So there's a lot of overhead, especially when the bitmaps grow. So my request was, hey, can Microlab somehow do that manipulation closer down in the C level than what I had access to in pure Python?
So Jeff, perhaps you can help me out with that. Is it correct that we can simply grab the, as we discussed it on Saturday night, that we simply grab the pointer from the bitmap construct, whatever it is, object, plug it into the constructor of the array, and then simply call a copy function on that, and then we are done. Is that correct?
So I think there's a couple of things specific to, one is specific to what KMatch98 is doing. So when we have a Python bitmap, they can have a variety of different formats. So like they can be 1-bit, 2-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, 16 and 24 bits per pixel. So there's a lot of different data types, and those are data types which are not directly supported in Microlab at this time. And the other thing is that there is not a way to these buffer or these bitmap objects in display IO can't be treated with the buffer protocol right now, and that's a limitation on our end. So the stuff that we were discussing, which I was talking in the context of a thing called pixel buff, which is different from a display IO bitmap, wouldn't directly apply.
Okay, so that means that if we want to bring that into Microlab, then we still have to wait for the CircuitPython API because well, if I can't simply grab the pointer, then I am helpless. Somehow I have to get the data, and or do you think it's possible to circumvent this difficulty here?
I think
Or
that we could. I think we should figure out more about, you know, what parts of image processing properly belong in Microlab and what form are they going to take, and then we can figure out how do we make the CircuitPython bitmap work with that. For instance, when you change a pixel in a bitmap, that needs to do other operations so that we can track what areas of the screen need to be updated. So we have this idea of dirty rectangles. And so even if we could give you this buffer, I'm not sure how we make writing into the buffer something which is okay to do. And Scott, are you going to step in with something, or?
Well, actually,
not around that.
Okay. I saw your ring turn green for a second.
Oh, sorry.
So depending on how you want to manipulate this this frame, assuming that you want to slice it somehow, then I think that's okay, because then from the slice, you will know on your end which part of the image has to be updated, and the slice would, on the other hand, would determine on Microlab's side what has to be manipulated or what has to change in the data.
So the act of taking a writable slice is what would say this area has become dirty. That
I think right, but so you need some infrastructure or interface for that on your end. But I think that's in this way. It would be really easy to keep track of what's changing and what's not changing, and it would not break NumPy syntax in the sense. So I would find this actually quite a feasible way of dealing with this problem. But again, I have no experience here, so I'm just tossing ideas.
Well, yeah, it also feels like there's the complication of the additional data types, because those are also a driver of the code size of Microlab. So if you need to implement 1, 2, 4, 8, and 24-bit data types, one of those, well, several of those don't even exist in C. There is no C data type for them. What is the impact of that?
Right. Well, I don't know. I only know that in NumPy, booleans are actually uint 8s with a special flag. So exactly the problem that you mentioned, that even if the information is only 1 bit, that's stored in 8 bits.
Well, when it comes to a display I/O bitmap, they are packed in one of several ways into bytes, so they can represent 8 bits from left to right, or from right to left, or from top to bottom, or from bottom to top, depending on the characteristics of the display. So it becomes a little bit complicated.
So I don't know what to say to that.
I guess I'm trying to talk you out of implementing this particular operation, especially since KMatch98 has a really good start on an implementation in CircuitPython core in C now that I think is going to get most of the speed benefits. And
that's okay.
So maybe wait and revisit that. And as far as what image processing entails, probably pay more attention to OpenMV. It's really good that you check in with us, and bringing stuff in from a camera and displaying it in display I/O and adding an intermediate step of processing. Those would all be features we would really like to add to CircuitPython at some point. I don't think that is prioritized for anybody right now. It is coming down the road at some point, because Phil B was doing related work on Arduino, and that has been trickling out. And that's someday we'd like to bring it over to CircuitPython, but it hasn't happened yet.
Okay. All right. So these were my comments, and with that, I would like to hand it back to you, or I don't know, whatever it means at the end of the day. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to respond to the one big module and the functions of that general appeal stuff. Like, and just reiterate what we talked about before. Like, lots of small modules is the way to go. And the reason it's the way to go is because people, if they try to use it, they do it at the start, and that means that they get an import error at the start. If they're using a function somewhere in their code, they get an attribute error, and it makes no sense.
Well, I certainly agree with that. But on the other hand, first of all, you can still have a spelling error in the function name. So even if you could import the module, it doesn't mean that you can execute the function. And second,
right, but that the solution to that is local to that spot. Versus, I actually need, this like copy of CircuitPython doesn't support that thing is a very different thing. And like we've trained people to understand that our support boundaries are at the module level. Like,
okay, well, fair enough.
If you want to do that for MicroPython, I don't care. But like in CircuitPython, it's the way to go, in my opinion.
You don't have to fear anything, because I'm not going to change anything in this respect. I'm going to make it customizable. So if you want to go with that, then so be it. That's your choice. I have nothing against that. Okay. I think I don't have anything else to add to this. So Jeff, back to you.
All right. Well, I just want to add on that I'm so appreciative of how willing you are to work with us on these things, and to be willing to do extra work so that we can have it our way, and your other users who are served better by other choices can have it their way too. That's really wonderful. But I'm going to take a... Yeah, go ahead.
Now, well, thanks for the praise, but actually, it doesn't make sense to make it very specific to one use case, and it just makes absolutely no sense to have 5 different versions of Microlab or whatever you want to call it, simply because some people in CircuitPython would like to have it in this way, and some people in OpenMV would like to have it that way. I think it's much easier if it really saves resources if we do it in one place and make it customizable, and you use it the way you want to use it. So that's my standpoint.
All right. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. So I am going to go ahead and wrap up.
I do have a counter. I do have a counter to that, though.
No, Scott, you don't get a moment now. We're moving on.
All right. You're running the meeting.
That wraps up the CircuitPython meeting for August 17th. A big thanks to everyone who participated. If you want to support Adafruit and CircuitPython, and those of us who work on CircuitPython, please consider purchasing from the Adafruit shop at adafruit.com. The video of this meeting will be released on YouTube at youtube.com/Adafruit, and the podcast will be available on major podcast services. It will also be featured in the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter. Visit adafruitdaily.com to subscribe. Our next meeting is Monday, August 24th. If you aren't on Discord yet, visit adafru.it/Discord to join. To participate in the meeting, ask one of us to add you to the CircuitPythonistas role on Discord. We hope to see you again soon.